Good morning, everybody. It is my aim this morning to try and persuade any of you who have entrepreneurial instincts to unleash them without further delay. My name, as Chris says, is Mike Soutar, and I run one of the fastest growing startup media companies in the UK, Shortlist Media. We have grown from from 0 to 15.5 million pounds worth of turnover just in 4 years. We've grown from 5 employees 4.5 years ago to 95. And we have won countless awards. Actually, I say countless. Of course, I've counted them all. We've won 34 awards, which I polish on a monthly basis. At the heart of our business is a concept which we call freemium. It's the idea of taking high quality information and entertainment and delivering it to consumers for free and charging advertisers for the privilege of being part of that communication. It's something which has, in a very unorthodox way, taken the norms, taken the established understanding of what magazines do and changed that completely. And the business model that we took on has been something that has existed very successfully for 100 years. So we did something very unorthodox, we did something very insurgent, and in doing so, we have taken on and beaten the rest of the magazine establishment. So this is brilliant, and my only complaint, I guess, about the whole thing is this is something that I should have done 10 years ago or 20 years ago. Instead, I built my career managing businesses for other people. What I was doing just before this, 6 years ago, I was the editorial director of Britain's biggest magazine company. It was my job to research and develop and then launch magazines. If you launch magazines successfully, it's a very lucrative business. So therefore, I was on a massive salary. I had a huge office. I had not one, but 2 assistants. I had an army of developers. And in short, at that point in my career, I was probably the least likely entrepreneur of all time, because why would you give something like that up? Well, I'll tell you why. And that, by the way, is what we do. I ate something resembling this. Not exactly this, but something that probably did me as much damage. I ate a chicken sandwich, and later on, after that lunch where I ate the chicken sandwich, I got on a plane and I went abroad for a long weekend. But that evening, I discovered that with the chicken sandwich, I'd got some very, very serious food poisoning. It was a really, really nasty strain of food poisoning. Which, and listen, we've all had it, right? So I won't go into the gory details, considering it's just before lunch. But over the next couple of days, I got quite seriously ill. This here is the typhus bacteria, which started to run riot through my system. So upon my return to the UK, I was hospitalised, and my condition got worse and worse and worse. And there was a moment, probably about 4 or 5 days after I was in hospital, with kind of tubes coming in and out of me because this bacteria had entered my central nervous system, with doctors kind of rushing in and out, looking a bit concerned, and my wife in tears, that I thought, for the first time in my rather wonderful and gilded life, that it might be nice to be dead. Now, I don't think I was ever actually that close to snuffing it, but I suppose what I'd certainly had was a moment which started me reviewing what it was that I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So a month or so after I started to recover, I started to compose in my head my resignation letter, because I decided that life was frankly going to be too short to carry on working for other people. So I don't want you guys, because you are young, you are the future, you're incredibly smart and brilliant and dynamic, and whilst I'd like to employ all of you, I'm now going to tell you 8 reasons why I think you should unleash that entrepreneurial spirit and not wait until you are either as old or as ill as I was. Reason number 1. Recessions are great times to start businesses. Disney, IBM, Apple, MTV, Microsoft, these are all businesses, extraordinary businesses, which started during recessions, driven by creative people with extraordinary ideas and with real vision and determination. If you start a business in a recession and it survives, then it's no accident that it's surviving. It's because you've managed to create a service or a product that genuinely responds to consumer need. You've probably got your pricing structure spot on, and you've definitely got a lower cost base. And what this means is you will have far less competition when the upturn eventually comes. And despite the fact that there are all sorts of absolutely horrendous headlines going on out there, despite the fact that as a world we're in some trouble, an upturn will come. And when it comes, there will be a rising tide, and that rising tide will float your boat faster and higher than everybody else's, because all of the people who decide to launch when the upturn comes, well, you'll be 1 or 2 or 3 years ahead of them. If you can survive the hard times, you will thrive during the good times. Our business flourished because of the recession rather than suffered. And it flourished because our competitors, those incumbent players, the establishment, had too many problems on their hands to snuff out the threat that we posed to them. It also meant that they were laying off really phenomenally talented people, and that they weren't hiring the best young talent coming through, thus leaving us a clear route to being able to do so. Reason number 2. The earlier you start, the easier it is. The younger you are, the fewer obligations you have. Families are, not to be too brutal about it, a collection of lovable cost centres. My old boss, Felix Dennis, a man who has made £1 billion from media over the last 40 years or so, has a great phrase for those really costly accessories that you accrue during your life. He says, if it floats, flies, or fornicates, rent it. What he's done across that time, he's a single man. I'm not saying he's a happy man, but he's a very rich man. Don't wait until you have things to sacrifice. It's a whole lot easier to stay in the office to win that all-important contract for your new baby if you don't have an actual baby back at home. And you're also more mobile. You are able to pick your life up. I know some guys who, about 8 or 9 years ago now, decided to go to Vietnam. There were a couple of them, to set up a research business. One of them had worked in a research company in London for 3 months. That was the extent of the experience and the understanding and the knowledge that they had. They just knew more than the people in the marketplace that they went to. They worked really hard at it. It was incredibly hard. It was incredibly exciting. And they sold that business about 1.5 years ago to an enormous marketing services group for, I think, about $30 million US. So they did not bad out of the concept that you can just get up and move. Go and create businesses in growth economies. China, Mexico, Brazil. These are phenomenally exciting and vibrant places. Learn to think like an insurgent. There are 2 basic fundamental positions you can adopt in any market. First of all, there's the big guy there. There's the incumbent. He has the market share. He has the resources, the leverage. He has the customer relationships, and he has capital. These guys are like boxing heavyweights. They are muscular, They are powerful. If they catch you with a punch, it's game over. But they are a bit slow and a bit conservative. They have everything, but they also have everything to lose, which sometimes makes them pause. And then there's the insurgent. They have nothing and nothing to lose. The only way they can win is to be nimble, to be clever, to be fast, to be creative, to be audacious and innovative. The insurgent is the one that always challenges the norms, challenges the established working practices. And the insurgent has nothing to lose, and it is wonderfully liberating when you have nothing to lose. You become incredibly focused. As I said earlier on, we turned around a business model that had been going for 100 years. We created an entirely new consumer proposition. We created an entirely new offering for advertisers, and we created a whole new distribution network upon which the business sits. We would never have done that had we been the incumbents. Also, what was useful about that was we knew that if we succeeded, it would be very difficult or very painful and very costly for the incumbents to respond to that and to change their own business model, which is exactly what's happened over the last 4 years. A little knowledge is priceless. Celebrate your rough edges. Glory in the fact that you don't know everything, and you especially don't know what you can't do. This van here represents to me the nationwide hand distribution network that we set up at Shortlist Media. For the first 6 months of my business partner and I spent a lot of time in vans, probably around about the same vintage as this one, around the country, learning how to distribute. If we'd known how difficult it was going to be, we'd never have started. And we'd still be absolutely at square one. We eventually did it, and it is now our most valuable asset of all. Talking of assets, your greatest asset as a young person is that you understand young people. I employ young people because they know what's going on. It's a phenomenally effective and cost-effective way for me to run my business. I'm telling you this so that you don't fall into the same trap. Your greatest asset is that you know how young people behave and why they behave that way. You understand why it is that 60% of under 20s would prefer an iPhone to a car. You understand why, you know, the only way is Essex is vastly superior to Made in Chelsea. You understand why it is that people think that, you know, Tiny Temper is going to be overtaken by, I've forgotten his name now, Loic Essien. It's true. You don't need to commission expensive focus groups to find this out. My mate, Alan Sugar, and I never thought I'd say that before, has a central philosophy, and he believes that people should launch businesses in things that they know. Well, this is what you know. There are lots of anxious investors out there. And again, despite the headlines out there, they do exist. Most startup businesses require capital, at least some seed capital. And there's money out there. It is hot money, and it's looking for a return. And it's simple maths. Investors must invest, especially now. With their money in the bank, they earn an interest rate of 1 to 1.5%. And then they've got to pay tax on that return. Against that, inflation is running at 4 to 5%. So these people are making a negative return of between 3.5% and 4%. This is a disaster. They need you as much as you need them. And then this really, your first idea doesn't have to be the best that you'll ever have. So long as it's good enough, it'll give you the springboard. My partner and I started a consultancy business, a research and development business. We won some contracts. It allowed us to employ some freelancers. We got some money in that allowed us to employ some decent developers on the staff. And then we went from there. We incubated this unorthodox business model. We wrote a business plan. We went and got investment. We launched, and lots of hard work later, 4 years on, this is where we are. The consultancy wasn't and isn't a bad business. It's just not as good as the one that we've got now. And that's really the lesson. If we had waited, then our second idea would never have happened. We'd still be at square one. So to conclude, I wish you 3 things. Firstly, that you create wealth and fulfillment for yourself, and that you create employment and job satisfaction for others. That you don't wait a minute longer than you absolutely have to, that you have a real sense of urgency to do this. And that finally, if you end up in hospital, the nurses are as nice to you as they were to me. Thank you and good luck.